Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Tom Spark and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about why anonymous VPN companies are good for business but bad for the end user. Hey guys, just a reminder to check out vpntierlist.com. It's a collection of all my ratings on the channel, and you're going to find lots of helpful information here on how to choose a VPN. Anyways, back to the video. So a lot of VPN companies are anonymous, which basically means that you can't easily find out who is the CEO of the company. You can't really find anything out about the employees. A lot of times you're not even really sure where they are or who owns the company. Most of the companies have privacy policies, and you'll find some generic kind of name for the company. A lot of people might make the argument, well, VPN companies don't want to have public or transparent ownership, so that way spy agencies and stuff like that can't go after them. However, this is not really the case. If spy agencies and stuff like this want to contact these companies, they have the power and means to do so through government and stuff like that and lawyers. But the end consumer never really gets any of that ability, because we can't really do anything to look at who owns the company and stuff like that like law agencies can. So I think having an anonymous company and ownership, but just for the presence of protecting against spy agencies, doesn't really make sense. I think there are a lot of problems though with having an anonymous VPN company, and some of my favorite companies have public and transparent ownership. Take for example TorGuard VPN. You can look it up. It's based in the United States. You could find the CEO, some of its employees. It's always been pretty transparently owned. Another VPN that is very transparent is Windscribe. You know who owns the VPN. And it's kind of unfortunate to see that besides those two companies, there really aren't that many companies out there that are transparently owned and publicly acknowledging who owns them. You might be wondering, well, why does it really matter? Well, VPN companies often get bought out, and for the end user who's not really tracking legal terms and stuff like that, it's pretty hard to track that. There are some more kind of transparently owned companies, and some of the stuff that is happening behind the scenes can be found out. Take for example IPVanish. It is a US based company, and it has kind of been changed hands a couple times. Now most people aren't necessarily going to do the research and find out who owns IPVanish, but if you do some digging around, you could find that it's owned by J2 Global, and StackPath was former owners and stuff like this. So there is kind of like a pipeline of who owns it and stuff like that. It's pretty clear that who owns it, but unfortunately, besides IPVanish and TorGuard and maybe Windscribe, a lot of companies don't really have that transparent of ownership. Not only that, but a lot of companies like maybe even CyberGhost have kind of weird questionable ownership, owned by Cape, who used to distribute malware and stuff like that. So that's questionable ownership. But again, these kind of companies kind of try to hide it, and you have to do a lot of digging around. But a lot of companies, even if you do digging around, you can't really find out who owns the VPN really. It's just going to be, like I said, some kind of generic name. And if you don't know who owns it or who's planning on owning it, maybe you sign up for a VPN and you think you like the company, and then a couple years later down you find out it's another company that's running the company. That might be kind of annoying. I think if you don't know the company behind the product, the VPN itself, if you don't know it well, you can't always know what it will do. And I think that's a lot of reason why companies like PureVPN and IPVanish got in trouble, because they were kind of respected VPNs and they ended up giving logs. But the people behind the people using these products didn't really know the companies. They didn't really know exactly what these companies were going to be doing and if they could trust them. So when the trust was violated, it was a pretty big deal. However, there are a lot of VPN companies where we don't know much about them, and we don't really know what they would do in certain circumstances. So can we really trust a lot of the VPN companies out there? Well, I don't really think so. A lot of VPN companies seemingly use what are called shell companies. A lot of companies in the world that are very big have offshore locations for tax reasons and often legal reasons. But a lot of time these companies have so many legal loopholes and so many companies and ownerships, it gets really confusing, and it's hard to tell exactly who owns a company and where your data could even be going with said company. I personally don't really want to use a VPN that is using an offshore company or based somewhere kind of weird like Panama or the British Virgin Islands or these kind of places, because these places are often places where big companies use offshore locations for tax evading and things like this. The Panama Papers is a big scandal that just came out a couple of years ago, where it turns out a lot of companies using offshore companies to evade taxes and save so much money that really should be being invested into infrastructure in the world. I personally don't really feel comfortable using a VPN that's using like an offshore location like this, even if there is some kind of legal reason that they couldn't be prosecuted by spy agencies. which I think still can happen. I mean, these spy agencies are pretty powerful. If they want to find someone using NordVPN, if they think someone's using NordVPN, chances are they're going to go after them. It kind of leads me into my 14 eyes argument. A lot of people are saying, oh, I'm not going to use this VPN because it's based here or based there. I'm going to use a VPN that's based somewhere else in the world. But a lot of times it's hard to really use this as a way to look at it, because how can you really trust a company that's halfway around the world? You don't really know who owns it. You don't really know what they're doing. So I just think that's also a little bit sketchy in my opinion. I think a lot of times VPNs kind of oversell their legitimacy and anonymity and themselves as a good company, but how can you really trust these things if you don't know the company behind it? A lot of the most successful companies in the world have transparent ownership and public ownership, and you know the people behind them. You know Amazon is successful. You know that Jeff Bezos is on top of it. Steve Jobs and Apple and Bill Gates and Microsoft. But is it like this for any VPN? Really? Not really. Like I said, only a couple of VPNs like TorGuard and maybe Windscribe kind of have this public ownership and kind of trust factor. But a lot of VPNs out there, you don't know anything about them. So why are they good companies exactly? Is it because of their marketing? Is it because of them just spending so much money on marketing? That's really it seems like. Would you trust Apple or any of these big tech companies if you didn't know anything about the company behind it? Well, I don't know. I think that's why VPN companies in a lot of ways kind of get away with this, because the whole industry is based on anonymity and security, and it's almost like they can use it for themselves. But I personally think that VPN companies should not really be anonymous or private at all. I think that should only be the product and not the company itself. Transparent VPN companies should be more of a thing. We should know who owns the company and the company behind it. That way we can put more trust in the company, know what the company will do later on down the line, know what it's capable of and who's owning it. I think that's really important. So guys, that's my final thoughts, that VPN companies that are anonymous are not necessarily good for consumers. It's good for business maybe and tax reasons, but not necessarily good for us as the VPN users. Anyways guys, those are my thoughts. Let me know down what you think down in the comments down below, and I'll see you again very soon.